and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. The U.S. push for Greenland acquisition grows, with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent now saying Europe is too weak to guarantee Greenland security. The European Union is reportedly considering hitting the U.S. with retaliatory tariffs worth over $107 billion. Reports say up to 18,000 people have been killed in mass anti-government protests in Iran, while the Iranian president warns any attack on the country's supreme leader would be acknowledged as a declaration of war. President Lee Jae-myung will be hosting Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni for summit talks here in Seoul on Monday, with the two sides looking to expand the two countries' cooperation on trade, investment, and science and technology. Tensions are escalating between Europe and the U.S. over Washington's threat to impose new tariffs until it can acquire Greenland. EU leaders are mustering up a joint response that could include tens of billions of dollars worth of retaliatory measures. Our Oh Soo-young starts us off.
European leaders will hold an extraordinary summit this week as Brussels steps up preparations for a possible trade confrontation with the United States over Greenland. European Council President Antonio Costa said Sunday that he had decided to convene the meeting to coordinate the EU's response to US tariff threats. An EU official said the meeting is likely to be held in person on Thursday. The move follows an emergency meeting of EU ambassadors in Brussels on Sunday, where diplomats reached a broad agreement to intensify efforts to prevent US President Donald Trump from imposing tariffs on European nations next month. According to the Financial Times, European leaders are examining retaliation options that could reach close to $108 billion, including tariffs and possible restrictions on access to the EU market. This comes after Trump warned Saturday he would slap a 10% tariff on Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, Great Britain, the Netherlands and Finland, starting February 1st. He would hike those tariffs to 25% on June 1st and would maintain them until the US is allowed to purchase Greenland. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said Sunday that the US tariff threat was a mistake, while the Netherlands Foreign Minister called it blackmail.
This is not how allies should treat each other, and in that sense, I understand the word blackmail. Yes, absolutely. We have until February 1st to really present a united front to make it clear that we do not find this acceptable.
France and Germany have also taken a firm line, with Paris proposing that the EU examine all available countermeasures, including the bloc's anti-coercion instrument, adopted in 2023 to respond to political pressure exerted through trade. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said Sunday that the EU and Britain stand firm in their commitment to uphold the sovereignty of Greenland and Denmark. In her post on X, she says she discussed the developments with NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte, along with the leaders of Britain, France, Germany and Italy. Concerns are growing for the future of the transatlantic alliance.
This has become a matter between Europe and the United States. This has become a matter of the future of NATO, but also about the solidarity within the European Union. This is probably like the worst crisis in Danish foreign policy since the Second World War.
Even amid the criticism, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent claimed on Sunday that Europeans project weakness while the US projects strength, and that the US needs Greenland to prevent war. With President Donald Trump expected to attend the World Economic Forum in Davos on Wednesday, the coming days will be decisive for Europe's next move. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Iran's anti-government protests have left sharply disputed casualty figures, with estimates ranging from several thousand to as many as 18,000 dead, as unrest erupted last month begins to subside. Lee Seung-ja has more.
Casualty estimates from Iran's anti-government protests vary widely and remain unverified as the unrest that began last month appears to be easing. A report in the British newspaper The Sunday Times says between 16,500 and 18,000 people may have been killed, citing information from local doctors, with as many as 330,000 injured. Iranian authorities have not confirmed those figures. However, an Iranian official told Reuters that about 5,000 deaths have been confirmed, including roughly 500 security personnel. The U.S.-based human rights activist news agency estimates at least 3,308 deaths so far, saying arrests have exceeded 24,000, while thousands of additional cases remain under review. Iranian leaders, including Supreme Leader Ayatollah Sayyid al-Khamenei, blamed the violence on foreign interference, accusing the United States and Israel of inciting unrest. Iran's judiciary says no death sentences have been issued and claims investigations into possible foreign links could take years. According to the New York Times and Reuters, the protests have largely entered a lull. Meanwhile, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian warned on Sunday that any attack on the country's supreme leader would be treated as a declaration of war. In a post on X, Pezeshkian said that an attack on Ayatollah Ali Khamenei would amount to a full-scale war with the Iranian nation. The comments appear to respond to speculation that U.S. President Donald Trump is considering removing or targeting Iran's top leader. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung is set to hold a summit with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni today. With Meloni's visit to Korea marking the first by an Italian PM in nearly 2 decades, the two leaders will be seeking to broaden Seoul-Rome cooperation. We turn to Professor Andrew Millard for more this morning. Good morning, Professor Millard.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
First, let's start with the upcoming E-Meloni summit. Now, this will be their second face-to-face. What do you think will be on the agenda to begin with?
So you're right. So as you just mentioned, this is really the first Italy-Korea summit in almost 2 decades, so in 19 years. So for that reason, this is quite a significant summit. I don't think this is going to be as big a summit as the previous meeting that Lee had in China with Xi and things like that. But it's still going to be several things on the agenda. So there's going to be some trade issues, both Italy and Korea looking to boost their trade cooperation, also supply chain resilience. As we know, a couple of years ago, there was also the mutual cultural exchange year from 2024 to 2025. So I'm pretty sure they'll also be discussing cultural exchanges, so people-to-people exchanges. As we know, in a few weeks' time, there's going to be the Winter Olympics held in Italy. So I think culture will also be a big part of the agenda. However, I think right now, just based on the timing, really security issues are going to be very high on this agenda. So for Prime Minister Meloni, she's going to be looking at what are the issues in Northeast Asia between China, South Korea, Japan, also the US, and vice versa for President Lee. This is really a great time to really sit down with Prime Minister Meloni and discuss what is really happening between the EU and the US in Greenland with these possible new trade war between the EU and US. This could have very big implications also for South Korea-EU relations as well.
So talks on regional security will likely top the agenda. Now, you mentioned supply chain resilience, Professor Miller. There's a particular focus on whether the two sides will issue a joint agreement on supply chain cooperation. The question is, how closely can South Korea and Italy actually work together on supply chains?
So actually, if you look over the past few years, South Korea and Italy have been sort of rebuilding and really strengthening their relationship just in general, so for trade. So back in 2018, there was the strategic dialogue, the strategic partnership which they enacted. Back in 2023, there was also an MOU for industrial cooperation agenda. Last year, there was also the Italy-South Korea Business Forum, where depending on different reports, at least more than 100 companies from both Italy and Korea met in Seoul. So that was in September. So there's definitely been a lot of progress, a lot of action, a lot of MOUs, discussions between Italy and Korea over the past few years. So they are really looking to build a lot more cooperation. When it comes to supply chain, however, we have to remember this isn't just about focusing on one country. Both Italy and South Korea, they're going around looking for different ways that they can secure their supply chains. So for Italy, we see Prime Minister Meloni on this trip. She's also been to Oman. She's been to Japan. We've seen recently President Lee from South Korea also going to China, also going to Japan. So they're both looking for different ways. But I think definitely for South Korea, Italy, areas such as green technology, defense, aerospace, AI technologies, these are certain areas where there is a lot of complementary industries between the two countries. So there could be potential action there.
I see. Professor Miller, let's shift our attention to over in Europe. Calls are growing for the European Union to activate its anti-coercion instrument in response to the growing trade threat by the Trump administration. Can you explain what the ACI is and whether it can actually put any real pressure on the U.S.?
So the ACI, so the anti-coercion instrument, this is actually a relatively new instrument from the European Union. It was only adopted in late 2023. So far, it has never been actually initiated. So there was a time in 2024, something to do with China and electric vehicles. But at that point, it was actually blocked by Germany. But effectively, the ACI is where if the EU considers that a third country outside of the EU has some sort of economic threat or economic coercion against the EU, then the European Commission can decide, we want to take action against this country. They send it to the European Union Council. The Council then decides by what we call qualified majority voting, whether to take action or not. Now, if they decide to take action, which basically requires all of the EU member states to work together, then potentially they could increase tariff barriers, they could have restriction on imports or exports. So there are certain sort of ways that they can counter this coercion. If it doesn't happen, though, the European Commission still has the power to increase tariffs and so on anyway.
Well, I do have to ask you, will the ACI be effective? I mean, if not, what other options do European countries have to counter Trump's, ongoing ambitions for Greenland?
So again, the ACI, it could be very effective, but what the EU really needs for the ACI, and even without it, it requires unity. It requires all of the EU member states to stand together in solidarity to have a very coordinated response against these countries. So right now we can see with Greenland, there really is a very big threat. And right now it's against 8 members of Europe, not all the European Union. So really there is a very strong threat against them, but it requires all 27 members of the EU to stand together to very strongly criticize the US and say, no, you cannot do this, because as Kaja Kallas, who is the EU High Representative, she just said, right now, China and Russia, they're having a field day because what is happening now, if we see divides happening within the European Union, this makes the EU very weak. So the EU member states, they must stay together. That's the most important point.
Unity appears to be the core message for now. Thank you, Professor Millard, for your time and your insight as always. You have a wonderful day.
Okay, thank you. You too.
South Korea and China will launch another round of negotiations over services and investment under their bilateral free trade agreement. According to Seoul's Trade Ministry, the 13th round of follow-up talks will kick off in Beijing on Monday for a 5-day stretch, with around 30 officials from both sides taking part. Since concluding the FTA in 2015, Seoul and Beijing have held 12 formal rounds of talks so far to create a broader trade and investment environment between the two countries. Following the Korea-China summit earlier this month, where leaders agreed to seek a meaningful progress this year, the latest talks aim to accelerate negotiations to open up more services, investment, and finance. Tesla says it's close to completing the design of the next-generation AI-5 chip for its vehicle's full self-driving system. The company's CEO Elon Musk said on Saturday that the development of a later version, the AI-6, is also already underway. Musk added that Tesla is targeting a 9-month design cycle for future chip iterations. Now, looking ahead, Tesla plans to work with Samsung Electronics to manufacture the AI-6 chip. The two companies signed a $16.5 billion agreement last year, a deal widely viewed as a major boost for Samsung's contract chipmaking or foundry operations. While Gwangju City and Jeollanam-do Province and Daejeon City and Chungcheongnam-do Province are seeking administrative integration, the government will provide up to 20 trillion won for 4 years to each integrated special city. Cha Yoon-kyung has more.
The government revealed plans on Friday to support integrated special cities formed through administrative mergers. Prime Minister Kim Min-seok announced during a press briefing at the government complex in Seoul a plan to provide assistance to cities and provinces that merge as part of the Lee Jae-myung administration's push for regional development. The government will provide up to 5 trillion won, approximately $340 million a year for up to 4 years to each integrated special city, aiming to ease the over-concentration of resources and people in the Seoul metropolitan area and promote more balanced national growth. A task force dedicated to financially supporting the integrations held its first official meeting, also on Friday, to devise detailed measures while consulting closely with the National Assembly. Prime Minister Kim said, merging local governments will be provided with clear incentives, autonomy, and accountability with the same administrative status as the capital city of Seoul. These new cities will also be granted priority for state-run companies relocating out of Seoul starting next year. Businesses that set up operations in newly merged regions will receive subsidies or tax benefits as part of efforts to turn them into the best city for businesses and startups. In terms of the new integrated cities naming and other concerns, legislative processes to accelerate mergers are in place in Daejeon and Chungcheongnam-do Province, as well as Gwangju and Jeollanam-do Province. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
Global audiences and critics alike have been swept away by the Netflix phenomenon K-pop Demon Hunters, fueling high expectations for the next wave of Korean K-screen productions. Our culture correspondent Park Kwon-woo tells us more.
What began as an animated film inspired by Korean culture has grown into a global phenomenon. K-pop Demon Hunters recently made headlines with its Golden Globes wins, sparking renewed discussion about the expanding creative power of K-culture. South Korea's culture minister also recently congratulated director Maggie Kang on the historic achievement, calling it a rare moment where a K-culture-based animated film was recognized globally for both creativity and artistic quality. The minister added that the film's success reflects the growing international influence of Korean pop culture, while also showing how stories rooted in Korean identity can resonate across cultural boundaries. Experts say the film's appeal goes beyond awards.
Compared to its competitors at the Golden Globes, K-pop Demon Hunters presented a fresh and original animated work. It's neither a franchise nor part of an existing series. The film incorporates cultural motifs unfamiliar to the West, but presents them in an engaging way that's accessible to a global audience.
The same expert also noted that the film's release on a global streaming platform significantly expanded its reach, allowing international audiences to engage with Korean culture more directly. Adding that, this is even more meaningful at a time when the film industry has grown increasingly conservative amid a slowdown, with the movie industry relying more on star actors and directors instead of developing new creative ideas. Amid criticism that the film cannot be considered Korean content due to foreign investment, this argument was dismissed.
Considering the industrial influence of the film, that argument feels outdated. Since the release of the film, K-pop streaming has increased, and more people are learning Korean. Along with the rise in tourism, visitors are exploring Korean cultural elements featured in the film, which ultimately helps grow Korea's cultural industry.
From K-pop streaming to museum visits, the impact is already being felt. And now with the Grammy Awards and the Academy Awards still to come this year, the question is how much further Korean content can travel on the global stage. Park Kwon-woo, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. In southern Spain, a collision between two high-speed trains has killed at least 21 people and injured dozens. The crash happened near Cordoba at around 6:40 on Sunday evening after a train traveling from Malaga to Madrid derailed and veered onto a neighboring track, colliding with a second train heading in the opposite direction, which then also derailed. Emergency services said at least 21 people were killed and 25 people suffered serious injuries. All rail traffic between Madrid and Andalusia is suspended as rescue operations are underway. The Pentagon placed about 1,500 active duty soldiers on standby for possible deployment to Minnesota amid protests in Minneapolis against the federal immigration crackdown. U.S. officials said on Sunday that the Army issued prepare to deploy orders to troops based in Alaska, though it remains unclear whether they will be sent. Tensions in Minneapolis have escalated after January 7th when an immigration and customs enforcement officer fatally shot protester Renee Good in her car. President Donald Trump has warned he could invoke the Insurrection Act if state officials fail to protect immigration agents. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey said any military deployment would worsen tensions, calling it a dangerous escalation. In Guatemala, armed gangs killed 7 police officers on Sunday after authorities moved to retake control of prisons seized by inmates. The killings followed a major security operation to retake 3 maximum security prisons and rescue 46 guards who were held hostage. Inmates at the prisons had coordinated an uprising to demand greater privileges for a jailed gang leader. The government said the violence followed the arrest of a top figure in the Barrio 18 gang, which Guatemala has designated a terrorist group. Authorities have canceled school classes nationwide on Monday and launched joint police and military operations to secure urban areas, urging residents to stay home for safety. In Sri Lanka, anonymous owners unveiled on Saturday a 3,563-carat purple star sapphire, claiming it is the largest of its kind ever documented. A gem expert said the stone, named Star of Pure Land, displays a rare 6-ray star pattern known as asterism. The sapphire's owners said miners discovered the gem near Ratnapura in 2023. International valuers have estimated the sapphire's worth at $300 million to $400 million, and the owners have said they are ready to sell.
It was another rough start to the Monday morning commute for the central regions in Jeollabuk-do province with overnight rain and snow, and there could be more snow today. Watch out for icy patches and slippery conditions. And behind this system, a surge of freezing air will move in, and temperatures will drop rapidly from this afternoon. Tomorrow morning, Seoul will be waking up to minus 13 degrees Celsius, and on Wednesday, it's going to feel like minus 20 degrees. And afternoon highs will also stay below freezing throughout the week. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to 0 degrees with much improved air quality. Gwangju topping out at 4 degrees, Busan still mild at 10 degrees under brighter skies in most parts of Korea this afternoon. And we really need to prepare for the coldest time of the year this week and take precautions against cold-related damage. Also, if you are visiting Korea this week, make sure to bring the warmest jacket you have.
That is all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.